John Carter stood by the large window in the Galactic Council chamber. His eyes moved across the stars beyond the glass. After 20 years as Earth's ambassador, he knew what the vote would be before it happened. The council chamber was a massive room with seats for representatives from over 30 alien species. The curved walls glowed with soft blue light. In the center, a round platform held the council leaders, the oldest and most respected members of the galaxy's ruling body. The vote stands at 28 in favor, 2 against, announced High Counselor Zliktar, his 4 arms holding the ceremonial staff of office. The Ardaxian's gray skin reflected the blue lights. Humanity will no longer participate in peace talks with the Vespid Empire. John felt his jaw tighten, but kept his face calm. He had warned them for months. The Vespids were not seeking peace. Every offer they made had hidden traps. Every agreement contained double meanings. But the Council saw human caution as aggression. They viewed Earth's military readiness as warmongering. Ambassador Carter, Zliktar said, looking down from his high seat, "The Council thanks Earth for its participation, but we must move forward without human interference. Your unique approach to diplomacy is not helpful at this time." John stepped forward. "High Counselor, I ask one final time. Review the intelligence reports my government provided. The Vespid language contains nuances your translators miss. What they promise is not what they plan." A low murmur spread through the chamber. The Tellarite representative huffed in annoyance. The Proximan delegate's skin flashed colors of dismissal. "We have reviewed Earth's concerns," Zliktar replied. His voice was firm but not unkind. "Our experts find no evidence of deception. Your military analysts see threats where diplomats see opportunities." 2 council security officers approached John. They were Centaurians, tall and strong with 4 eyes that never blinked. "This is a mistake," John said simply. He didn't raise his voice. "One you will regret." "Your shuttle awaits, Ambassador," one guard said. John nodded once to the council and turned. With dignity, he walked out of the chamber, the guards following close behind. In his shuttle, John sent an encrypted message to Earth. "Sundown Piquar Uto Col Active." The code meant humanity was now alone against whatever came next. The trip back to Earth took 3 days. John spent the time reviewing records of council meetings, looking for signs of Vespid manipulation he might have missed. The pieces were all there, subtle threats disguised as cultural differences, strategic concessions that gave away nothing of value, careful study of each species' weaknesses. Earth's orbital station came into view, a massive structure of metal and glass that served as humanity's gateway to the stars. Beyond it, the blue planet spun peacefully, unaware of the danger heading its way. At Earth Defense Headquarters in Geneva, Admiral Susan Miller received John's report in person. Her office overlooked Lake Geneva, a calm contrast to the storm brewing in space. "So they kicked us out," she said after hearing the full story. Her gray hair was cut short, her uniform perfectly pressed, just as we predicted. "Yes," John replied. "They think we're paranoid. They believe the Vespids want peace." Susan walked to her desk and pressed a button. A holographic map of the galaxy appeared, with key military positions marked in red. "The Vespids have been moving ships to these locations," she said, pointing to spots just outside Council space. "Officially, they're trade convoys. Our deep space sensors tell a different story." "Weapons?" John asked. "Enough to hit 17 Council worlds at once. And now, with us removed from the talks, there's no one left who can see through their lies." John looked at the map, at the vulnerable worlds that had just voted to silence Earth's warnings. "How long?" he asked. "Our models say 3 weeks, maybe 4, Susan replied. "That's when they'll strike. And what will we do when they ask for help?" Susan's face showed no emotion, but her eyes were hard. "That depends on the president. But they made it clear we're not welcome at their table." "They've made a critical error," she added quietly, "and it's one they'll soon regret." Outside, The sun set over Geneva. In the darkness of space, the Vespid ships moved silently into position, just as humanity had warned they would. 3 weeks passed quickly. On Earth, military forces moved with quiet efficiency. Ships were recalled from distant patrols. Weapon systems were checked and rechecked. Soldiers said goodbye to their families, not knowing when they would return. Captain Alan Rodriguez sat in the command chair of the EDF Vigilant, a destroyer-class warship stationed near the edge of human space. The bridge was quiet. Each crew member focused on their tasks. The large view screen showed only empty space and distant stars. "Status report," Alan said, his voice calm. Lisa Wright, his communications officer, turned from her station. "All systems normal, Captain. No unusual activity in our sector." Alan nodded. Admiral Miller's warning had been clear. Watch and wait. Do not engage unless attacked. The Vespids would make their move soon, but until then, humanity would follow the rules. "Message coming in," Lisa suddenly announced. "Multiple emergency channels." From Council space. Alan leaned forward. On screen, the view screen flickered, showing the chaotic scene. An alien face appeared. A Proximan, its skin flashing red and orange in distress. "This is Counselor Neela of the Proxima Coalition," the alien said, voice shaking. "We are under attack. Vespid warships have appeared at the cultural exchange centers. They've destroyed our orbital defenses, thousands dead already. Please, anyone who receives this message." The transmission cut off suddenly. "More coming in, sir," Lisa said, her fingers moving quickly across her panel. "Similar reports from 16 other Council worlds. The Vespids are hitting them everywhere at once." Alan stood up. This was exactly what human intelligence had predicted. The Vespids had used the peace talks to position their forces, and now they were striking. The Council had walked right into the trap. "Send word to command," Alan ordered. "It's happening exactly as Admiral Miller predicted. Request instructions." In the war room beneath Geneva, Admiral Miller reviewed the incoming data with her staff. Large screens showed the coordinated Vespid attacks across Council space. President Olivia Garcia joined them, her face grim. "The first distress calls have arrived," Susan told the president. "They're asking for help." President Garcia studied the tactical display. "How bad is it?" "Bad," Susan replied. "The Vespids placed their cultural centers at strategic points near major population centers. When they attacked, there was no warning, no time to evacuate." The president was quiet for a moment. "What's your recommendation, Admiral?" "We're ready to deploy," Susan said. "The 3rd and 5th fleets can reach the hardest-hit Council worlds within days. But we need to consider our position carefully," the president finished for her. "They excluded us. Now they want our help." On the colony world of New Montana, Governor Frank Boyd received the emergency transmission from the Council. His office overlooked the capital city, where humans had built a new life on this distant planet. The message played again, the alien voice desperate. "They need our help," said his aide, Diane Powell. She stood by his desk, datapad in hand. Frank smiled grimly. 3 weeks ago, they said we were dangerous, too aggressive, that we didn't understand diplomacy." He looked out the window at the city below. "Now they understand why we were so concerned." "What should I tell them?" Diane asked. "Tell them we'll consider their request for assistance," he said, "after they'd formally apologize for our exclusion." In space, the Vespid fleets moved from world to world with brutal efficiency. Their ships, black and yellow like the ancient Earth insects they resembled, fired on civilian targets without mercy. On the conquered worlds, Vespid soldiers rounded up survivors for processing. In the Council chamber on Centauride Prime, the once proud leaders argued among themselves. Their perfect peace had shattered in a single day. Councillor Zliktar's voice rose above the others. "We must contact the humans," he said. "We were wrong. They tried to warn us." On Earth, Admiral Miller received reports from spy satellites throughout Council space. The situation was worse than even she had predicted. "Begin Operation Broken Shield," she ordered. "Let's show them what humans can do." Across the galaxy, Earth ships prepared for battle. The Vespids had started this war. Humanity would finish it. The Galactic Council chamber was no longer a place of order and calm debate. 17 species shouted over one another as reports of Vespid attacks continued to arrive. The beautiful glass dome above them showed the stars, but now those stars seemed threatening rather than inspiring. Councillor Barracks of the Tellerates banged his ceremonial staff against the floor. The loud sound echoed through the room, creating a moment of silence. "We must have order," he said, his voice deep and rough. "Panic will not help our people." The council members returned to their seats. Many looked tired and afraid. Some had not slept since the attacks began. "Our military forces are overwhelmed," said the Ardaxian representative. His gray skin had turned almost white with stress. The Vespids knew exactly where to strike. They disabled our communication networks first, then targeted our defense systems. "We were fools," said Councillor Neela of the Proxima Coalition. Her voice was barely audible above the soft hum of the chamber's air systems. "The humans warned us. We should have listened." "We must contact the humans," Barracks said. "We were wrong to exclude them." A small alien with 6 eyes spoke up from the back of the chamber. "The humans have already received our distress calls. They are not responding." Silence fell over the council again. The truth was uncomfortable but clear. Humanity had no reason to help those who had rejected them. On Earth, the situation looked very different. The presidential war room buzzed with activity. Officers moved between stations, reporting fleet positions and enemy movements. Large screens showed the status of both human and council forces. "The Vespids have taken control of 7 council worlds," reported Defense Secretary Paul Jackson. He pointed to red areas on the galactic map. "They're establishing processing centers for prisoners. According to our intelligence, they plan to use the local populations as slave labor." President Olivia Garcia nodded grimly. "And the council's response?" "Disorganized," Paul said. "They never planned for this kind of attack. Their forces are scattered, trying to defend too many worlds at once." "And what about our colonies? Are they safe?" the president asked. Admiral Richard Bennett stepped forward. "So far, the Vespids are focused on council space, but we've detected scout ships near our borders. They're testing our defenses." The president stood up and walked to the large window overlooking Washington, D.C. The city looked peaceful in the morning light. "But for how long?" "We can mobilize the Fifth Fleet immediately," Paul said. "But the question remains, do we help those who rejected us?" President Garcia turned back to face her advisors. "The council made a mistake," she replied. "But we won't. Humanity doesn't seek vengeance. We seek a stable galaxy." She looked at Admiral Bennett. "Deploy the fleet, but make it clear, we're not rejoining their peace process. We're establishing our own terms now." The Admiral nodded and left the room to issue the orders. Across Earth and its colonies, military forces prepared for war. Ships were loaded with supplies and weapons. Soldiers boarded transport vessels. In offices and meeting rooms, human diplomats drafted a new framework for galactic security, one that wouldn't leave them sidelined again. At the Mars shipyards, the final touches were being added to humanity's newest warships. These vessels had been built in secret, away from the prying eyes of council observers. Now they would see their first action. On the colony world of New Montana, Governor Frank Boyd addressed his people. Thousands gathered in the main square to hear him speak. "For years we have warned the galaxy about the Vespid threat," he said, his voice carried by speakers throughout the city. "Now that threat has become real. Our fellow humans across council space are in danger. We will not abandon them." The crowd cheered. New Montana had been settled by people who believed in standing their ground. They would not run from this fight. In space, the first human battle groups moved into position. Their orders were clear: protect human colonies first, then assist Council worlds based on strategic importance. The war that humanity had tried to prevent had begun. Now, they would have to win it. The U.S. Defiant dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Arcturus system. On the bridge, Commander Nicole Harris watched as the stars stopped stretching and returned to their normal pinpoints of light. Her ship was the first human vessel to enter this region of space since the Vespid attacks began. "Scan the area," she ordered. "Let's see what we're dealing with." Her crew worked quickly at their stations. The Defiant was one of humanity's newest warships, equipped with technology that the Council had never seen. Its hull was dark gray, designed to absorb rather than reflect sensor scans. Its weapons were hidden behind sliding panels. "Commander, we have multiple contacts ahead," reported the sensor officer. "One Vespid battle cruiser, 3 destroyers. They've surrounded a civilian transport convoy. Council registry." Nicole leaned forward in her command chair. "Refugees?" "Yes, ma'am. Looks like they were trying to escape from Arcturus IV when the Vespids caught them." Nicole nodded. This was exactly the situation they had expected to find. The Vespids weren't just conquering worlds. They were capturing anyone who tried to flee. "Open a channel to the Vespid commander," she ordered. The communications officer worked at his console. "Channel open, Commander." Nicole stood up straight. Her voice was calm but firm. "Vespid vessels, this is Commander Nicole Harris of the Earth Defense Force ship Defiant. You are attacking civilian targets in violation of galactic law. This is your only warning. Withdraw or be destroyed." The bridge crew waited. Seconds stretched into a full minute. "No response, Commander," the communications officer reported. "But they're powering up their weapons." Nicole wasn't surprised. The Vespids had never been interested in peaceful solutions. That's what humanity had tried to tell the Council. "Battle stations," she ordered. "Shields up. Prepare to engage." The Vespid battle cruiser fired first. Bright blue quantum torpedoes streaked across space toward the Defiant. They hit the human ship's shields, which flared bright with energy but held firm. "Shields holding at 92%, reported the defensive systems officer. Nicole allowed herself a small smile. "Return fire. Target their weapons systems first." What followed was a demonstration of human military technology that the galaxy had never seen before. The Defiant's hidden weapon ports opened, revealing advanced beam weapons that cut through the Vespid shields as if they weren't there. On one of the refugee ships, Council observers watched in amazement as the lone human vessel engaged 4 Vespid warships at once, and was winning. "Impossible," whispered a Tellarite diplomat. "Their ship is less than half the size of the Vespid cruiser." His Proximan companion's skin flashed with colors of shock and awe. The humans, they were holding back. All this time. Across 7 sectors of space, similar scenes played out as humanity's fleet engaged the Vespid forces. Earth ships appeared near embattled Council worlds, driving back the invaders with surprising speed and force. On Earth, in the Senate chamber, Senator Kevin Russell addressed the emergency session. His words were broadcast across human space and to any Council world that could still receive transmissions. "For too long, the Council has dismissed humanity as aggressive, undiplomatic, and unwilling to compromise," he said. "Today they learned the truth. We prepare for war not because we want it, but because we understand that peace must sometimes be defended with force." He paused, looking directly into the camera. "You removed us from the table. Now we're setting a new one." On the colony world of Haven, human settlers watched the speech on public screens. When it ended, many cheered. Haven had been one of the first human worlds to detect Vespid scout ships near their borders. On the Defiant, Commander Harris watched as the last Vespid destroyer tried to escape. Her weapons officer looked at her, waiting for orders. "Disable their engines," she said. "We'll take prisoners. The more we learn about their plans, the better." The battle for Arcturus was nearly over, but the war had just begun, and humanity was only starting to show what it could do. 3 months into the war, The tide had turned. What began as a Vespid conquest was now a fighting retreat. Human warships pushed the invaders back from system after system, liberating council worlds that had been quickly overrun. Admiral Susan Miller stood on the bridge of the EDF Intrepid, humanity's largest battleship. Through the view screen, she watched as Vespid ships flood from the Ta CD system. Their once proud formations were now scattered, desperate to escape. "Shall we pursue, Admiral?" asked her second-in-command. Susan shook her head. "No. Let them run. They'll spread the word of their defeat." She turned to face the bridge crew. "Prepare landing parties. There are council citizens down there who need medical help." On Ta City IV, the main population center had suffered heavy damage during the Vespid occupation. Tall buildings lay in ruins. Fires still burned in some districts. The native Secians, a peaceful people known for their art and music, had endured weeks of brutal treatment. Major Peter Collins led the first human medical team to land on the surface. The Secians watched with large, wary eyes as human shuttles descended from the sky. Some hid in the ruins of their homes. Others stood in the open, too tired to run. "We're here to help," Peter said to the group that gathered cautiously near the landing zone. His translator converted his words to the musical Secian language. "We've brought food, medicine, and supplies." An elderly Secian stepped forward, leaning on a broken piece of metal as a cane. "The Vespids came with promises too," he said, his voice weak but defiant. Peter nodded. "I understand your caution. The Vespids lied. We won't." He set down his medical bag and opened it, revealing supplies. "You don't have to trust us, but please, let us treat your wounded." Slowly, the Secians began to accept human help. Medical teams spread throughout the city, setting up aid stations. Engineers started work on restoring power and clean water systems. In orbit above the planet, Susan received a message from Earth. President Garcia's face appeared on her screen. "Congratulations on Ta CD, Admiral," the president said. "It's an important victory." "Thank you, Madam President, but there's still much work to do." "Indeed, which is why I'm contacting you. The Council has formally requested peace talks, this time with humanity leading the negotiations." Susan raised an eyebrow. "They want our help to make peace with the same enemy they ignored our warnings about. Ironic, isn't it?" The president allowed herself a small smile. "But it's a sign that the galaxy is changing. The old council system is breaking down. This is our chance to build something better." On the council homeworld of Centaurid Prime, the chamber that once excluded humanity now prepared for their arrival. Workers hurried to repair damage from a Vespid bombing run. Council members argued about how to approach the humans. "We must offer them full leadership of the military response," said Councillor Barracks. "And what of our sovereignty?" asked another member. "Will we simply hand control to the humans?" "They already have control," Barracks replied bluntly. "Their ships protect our worlds. Their soldiers fight for our people. The question is not whether they will lead, but how we will work with them." Back on Ta City IV, Peter sat with a group of Secian children. They had gathered in what remained of a school building. The children were thin and scared, but for the first time in months, they had full meals and felt safe. "Tell us about Earth," one child asked. "Is it true your world has great oceans?" Peter smiled. "Yes, much of our planet is covered in water. We have huge forests, too, and mountains, and deserts. Will we see it someday?" another child asked. "I hope so," Peter replied. "When this war is over, the galaxy will be more connected than ever before." In space, the human fleet regrouped for its next push into Vespid territory. The ships moved with practiced precision, a striking contrast to the scattered council forces that fought alongside them. On the Intrepid, Susan reviewed the latest intelligence reports. The Vespids were pulling back to their core systems, abandoning their recent conquests. Victory seemed possible now, though the cost had been high. "Admiral," her aide said, The council representatives have arrived for the meeting. Susan nodded. Tell them I'll be there shortly. It was time to discuss the future, a future where humanity would no longer be ignored. 6 months after the Vespid offensive began, representatives from all council species gathered on the human orbital station Freedom above Jupiter. The massive ring-shaped station rotated slowly, creating artificial gravity for its visitors. Through its wide windows, the giant planet's swirling storms provided a dramatic backdrop. This meeting place was very different from the Grand Council chamber on Centauri Prime. Freedom was a working military installation, not a palace. The walls were plain metal. The lighting was functional rather than beautiful. The meeting room had simple chairs and tables instead of ornate thrones. Major Grace Wilson guided the alien delegates through security. Many looked uncomfortable as they passed through scanning devices and watched human soldiers stand guard at every doorway. The Admiral will see you now, she said, leading them into a conference room where Admiral Susan Miller waited. Susan stood as they entered. She wore her formal uniform with its rows of medals, but her face showed no emotion. Behind her, a large screen displayed a map of the galaxy with current battle lines marked in red and blue. Welcome to Freedom Station, she said. Please be seated. The aliens took their places around the large table. There were 17 species represented, from the tall, four-eyed Centaurians to the small, six-legged Proxima. Some still showed signs of injury from Vespid attacks on their homeworlds. Humanity never wanted war, Miller told the assembled diplomats. Her voice was calm but firm. But we prepared for it while you prepared speeches. Now we offer you a choice. A true alliance based on mutual respect and shared responsibility, or you can face the Vespids alone. High Counselor Zliktar, his gray skin now marked with scars from a Vespid bombing, leaned forward. We acknowledge our error, Admiral. The Council was wrong to dismiss Earth's warnings. We are grateful for your intervention. Susan nodded once. Gratitude is appreciated, but it is not enough. The old council system failed because it valued appearance over substance. It cared more about seeming peaceful than being protected. She touched a control on the table. The screen behind her changed to show images of devastated council worlds. Cities in ruins, refugee camps, Vespid prison facilities. This is the price of that failure, she said. Millions dead, worlds destroyed. And for what? Because you wouldn't listen to advice that seemed too aggressive. The room was silent. Many delegates looked down at the table, unable to meet her gaze. What do you propose, Admiral? Asked Counselor Barracks of the Tellarites. Susan touched the control again. The screen showed a new organizational chart. A new Security Council with human leadership will replace the ineffective diplomatic corps that failed to recognize the threat, she explained. Each member world will contribute to defense based on their capabilities. Some will provide ships, others technology, others resources. And Earth will command this new military, asked a Proximan representative, her skin flashing colors of concern. For now, yes, Susan replied. We have proven our capabilities. When other species demonstrate the same level of strategic thinking and military discipline, command positions will be shared. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The terms were hard to accept for species that had considered themselves superior to humans just months ago. These terms are not negotiable, Susan continued. The Vespids remain a threat. We cannot afford another failure of leadership. Zliktar looked around at his fellow council members, then back to Susan. We need time to discuss this among ourselves. Of course, Susan replied. You have until tomorrow morning. Then we will need your answer. As the delegates filed out, Governor Frank Boyd of New Montana entered from a side door. He had been listening to the meeting. Do you think they'll agree? He asked Susan when they were alone. They have no choice, she replied. Their forces are in disarray. Their people are suffering. Pride is a luxury they can no longer afford. Frank looked out the window at Jupiter's swirling clouds. It's strange to think that just 6 months ago, They wouldn't even listen to our concerns. The galaxy is learning an expensive lesson, Susan said, one I hope they remember. Outside the conference room, the council delegates gathered in small groups, talking in low voices. The future of galactic government was being decided, and humanity was now at its center. 1 year after humanity's exclusion from the peace talks, the combined forces of Earth and the former council worlds gathered at Ta City. The once devastated system was now the site of the final battle against the Vespid Empire. Admiral Susan Miller stood on the observation deck of the flagship EDF Intrepid. Through the large windows, she could see hundreds of ships in formation. Most were human vessels, sleek and powerful. Among them flew the rebuilt ships of Council Worlds, now marked with the new Galactic Alliance symbol. Councillor Barracks stood beside her, his large Tellarate frame dwarfing the human admiral. They watched as a small Vespid transport approached, carrying the surrender delegation. "I still don't understand," said Barracks, his voice low. "You knew their intentions all along. Why didn't you simply force us to listen?" Lieutenant Eric Simmons, Miller's aide, couldn't suppress a chuckle from where he stood nearby. Susan gave the young officer a stern look before turning back to Barracks. "That's not how humans work," she explained. "Sometimes people, and species, need to learn from their mistakes. You needed to see for yourselves what we were trying to tell you." The Vespid ship drew closer, its black and yellow hull now scared from battle. "They're requesting permission to dock, Admiral," reported the communications officer. "Permission granted," Susan replied. "Security teams in position." On the main hangar deck, human soldiers stood at attention as the Vespid ship landed. The doors opened, and 5 Vespid representatives emerged. They were tall, insect-like beings with compound eyes and 4 arms. Once proud and aggressive, they now moved with the careful steps of the defeated. Admiral Miller and Councillor Barracks arrived to meet them. Behind them stood representatives from every world that had joined the fight against the Vespid invasion. The lead Vespid, Admiral Kizet, approached and bowed his head. "We come to discuss the terms of our surrender," he said, his voice translated by a small device at his throat. "Follow me," Susan replied simply. As they walked to the conference room, a message reached Susan's personal communicator. It was from President Garcia on Earth. The text was short. "Ratification complete. The charter is approved." Susan allowed herself a small smile. After months of work, the new Galactic Charter had been accepted by all former Council worlds. Humanity was no longer just a member of the galactic community. They were its acknowledged protectors and leaders. In the conference room, Dr. Hither Morgan waited with the surrender documents. As a xenoanthropologist, she had been the first to identify the cultural patterns that revealed the Vespid's true intentions more than a year ago. Now she would witness the end of the conflict she had tried to prevent. "The terms are not negotiable," Susan told the Vespid delegation. "Your military will be disbanded. Your worlds will be under Alliance supervision. Your leaders will stand trial for war crimes." Admiral Kizet's compound eyes reflected the room's lights. "And what of our people? Will they suffer for our mistakes?" "No," Susan replied firmly. "Civilians will be treated fairly. We are not like you. We do not punish the innocent for the crimes of their leaders." The Vespid seemed surprised by this answer. After a moment, he placed all 4 of his hands on the document and pressed his thumbprint into the designated spots. "It is done," he said. As the Vespid delegation was escorted out, Dr. Morgan approached Susan. "A shame it took a war to establish real peace," she said quietly. Susan shook her head. "Not a shame," she corrected. "A necessary lesson. The galaxy now understands that humanity's directness wasn't aggression, it was clarity. And that's something worth preserving." Later that day, Susan stood alone on the observation deck. The stars seemed brighter somehow, now that the fighting was over. A new era had begun for humanity and for the galaxy. The peace talks that had once excluded them now couldn't proceed without them. Humanity had come a long way from that day in the council chamber when John Carter had been escorted out. They had proven themselves not just as warriors, but as leaders. Not just as fighters, but as builders of a better future. The mistake the Council made would never be repeated. Humanity had found its place among the stars, not by seeking power, but by being ready when that power became necessary.